So, hello dear 90s, what's up? How are you spending your time? Seriously, time is very difficult and we need to be very much patient to allow ourselves to pass this time. But in meanwhile, this time of toughness must be utilized to learn something, and that is why here I am with another chapter, that is Ishwaran, the storyteller. Fine. So, before initiating this chapter, let's talk about what is this chapter based upon. It means what is the theme of this chapter. So, this chapter is actually the theme of the story is the art of storytelling. See, quite funny in the story, what has been discussed, the art of storytelling. It's quite obvious that a storytelling is itself an art, and every Tom, Dick, Harry, you understand? Any common person cannot do this work easily. So that is why a good story becomes interesting only when the narrator twists and turns the action to make the narrative surprising and interesting. You can understand, for being a good storyteller, you are bound to add many spices from your side, then you can be a good storyteller. Alright, one more theme is there, and that theme is there that one must not be superstitious about ghosts or spirits unless one has a faint belief in one's own subconscious. Means, if you believe, you are conscious, you are alert, you must not believe in ghosts or spirits, because these things, this belief undermines our confidence in ourselves. Sometimes, on account of this, conviction that ghosts are there, we are unable to do many works. So that is why we must live in scientific era, terminating the superstitious belief of ghosts being in this world. Fine. So these are the topics which have been discussed in this chapter. Now let's initiate this chapter systematically. Name we have already you know heard. What is that? That is Ishwar the storyteller. And one more thing I would like to tell students this respect. The story has been written by R.K. Lakshman. And R.K. Lakshman is a very, very famous Indo-Anglian writer. Indo-Anglian means a person who has taken birth in India but writes in English is called Indo-Anglian writer. So he is a very famous Indo-Anglian writer. Now let's start this chapter. So see what is here. The story was narrated to Ganesh by a young man. Fine. So Ganesh was told a story. By whom? By a young man. And what was the name of young man? Mahendra. By name, his name was Mahendra, the person who had told a story to Ganesh. He was a junior supervisor in a firm. So he was a supervisor. Supervisor, a person who supervises something, handles something, manages something is called supervisor in a firm which offered on hire supervisors at various types of construction site. So he was working in a company who in fact was dealing in supplying manpower. Manpower means different big companies are there. They need different professionalists, all right, for different working. So that company is called manpower company or consultant company, all right, a recruitment company. So he was working in a recruitment company which used to supply, supervisors for different construction site, building sites. All right. Now see, Mahin's job was to keep an eye on the activities at the work site. So his main work was to supervise the construction site. He had to keep moving from place to place every now and then. Every now and then means always. He did not have a fixed place to work. He was bound to live a life of nomadic, so he had to, visit from place to place for his job as ordered by his head office. Fine, this was order of head office. From a coal mining, sometime he got his posting at coal mining area, or to a railway bridge construction site, and next time he had to work to a railway construction site. From there, after a few months, to a chemical plant, then next appointment, posting at a chemical plant which was coming up somewhere, which was about to be built and was establishing there. All right, so see, he was bachelor. Mahendra was bachelor. His needs were simple and he was able to adjust himself to all kinds of odd conditions. You can understand a bachelor person lives, life of his own choice. He does not have many needs. He lives life full of simplicity. What he needs 40 50 pairs of clothes, you know 4 5 pairs of shoes. Then in fact he is nomadic completely. Where is morning, where is evening? There is no answer of this question. But once a person gets married, you know he in fact lives a systematic life. He has to dance to the tunes of his wife. He has to presence. He has to make his presence in front of her always. But a bachelor lives a royal life. All right. So he was a bachelor. His needs were simple, and he was able to adjust himself to all kinds of odd conditions, whether it was an ill-equipped circuit house. So sometime a circuit house was there, a government, place was there, which was ill-equipped. It means it was not neatly built. He had to work there, or for a makeshift canvas. Makeshift canvas means temporary canvas sheet tent in the middle of a stone quarry. Quarry, it's a place where stones are extracted for building something. So he had to live in the middle of that place. So see, he had different odd places to live. Nevertheless, he adjusted himself very easily. A bachelor person can live anywhere in the world. But what he had, one asset. What is called asset? Something very valuable thing or person is called asset. So he had one asset, and what was that asset? He had, and that was his cook, Ishwaran. What was the name of his cook? Ishwaran. So Ishwaran has been called his asset. The cook was quite attached to Mahendra and followed him uncomplainingly wherever he was posted. So you can say he was a tag. He was his tag wherever Mahendra was posted. Ishwaran always, went along with him over there. And he never made any question like, why are you posted? I won't work here in this isolated place. It wasn't there at all. Ishwaran also adjusted himself, wherever Mahendra was posted. He was posted, he cooked for Mahendra, washed his clothes, chatted away with his master, talked with his master at night. All right, he could weave out endless stories and anecdotes. Anecdotes mean short story on varied subject, on different subjects. So in this way, this is the reason Mahendra has been called an asset for Ishwaran has been called asset for Mahendra because he was a multi-purpose, in fact tasking person for Mahendra. He used to cook, clean, wash clothes, and of course he was top class storyteller as well. Ishwaran also had an amazing capacity to produce vegetables and cooking ingredients. So he was top class cook also. Fine, seemingly out of nowhere in the middle of a desolate landscape with no shop visible for miles around. And this was his magic. Sometime Mahendra was posted where, miles around. There did not used to be any shop, any market. Still, surprisingly, Mahendra, Ishwaran was able to not only get all the ingredients, all the spices, all the vegetables, all right, and of course, he was able to cook them in no time. This was his magic. Somehow, he arranged all the essential ingredients for Mahendra, and then he was able to cook delicious food for him as well. He would miraculously, as a miracle, conjure means doing magic, up the most delicious dishes made with fresh vegetable within an hour of arriving at the Zingshi shelter at the new workplace. So this was his magic, that he was able to, you know, he was able to cook delicious vegetables in no time after arranging all the vegetables, of course, at a very new site where these things were not accessible, they were not available. Now, let's see. Mahendra would be up early in the morning. Mahendra always got up early in the morning. Everyone must get up early in the morning and leave for work after breakfast. After taking breakfast, he always went for breakfast, carrying some prepared food with him. All right, prepared food for his lunch. Meanwhile, Ishwaran would tidy up the shed, the place where Mahendra was. He cleaned that place, washed the clothes, and have a leisurely bath, comfortable bath, pouring several buckets of water over his head. So, see, he in fact bathed with several buckets of water. All right, don't say in this time he is wasting water. So, of course, he used several buckets of water for bathing. All right, let's see. After eating, pouring several butter of water, and he had muttering. What is muttering? Whispering a prayer all the while. And he whispered a prayer all the while. It would be lunchtime off, and then it would be lunchtime. By then, sorry. After eating, he would read for a while before dozing off, and then before dozing off, sleeping, he in fact would he used to read for a while. The book was usually some popular Tamil thriller running to hundreds of pages, and he loved to read Tamil books which contained hundreds of pages. Popular Tamil, its imaginative description and narrative means the way story is told, narrative flourishes, provide would hold Ishwaran in thrall, in complete absorption. So, the story thrill, adventure always absorbed the mind of Ishwaran, and then he kept on reading this story for hours. His own description were greatly influenced, impacted his own narrative. What is narrative? Style of storytelling. His own description, narratives were greatly influenced, means impacted by the Tamil authors that he read. So, in his own storytelling, there was a great, influence, impact of Tamil authors. Means he was influenced with Tamil authors, and his story always had a great blending of their style. When he was narrating even the smallest of incidents, he would try to work in suspense and surprise ending to the account. So he was a top class, excitement creator, a thing which in fact is so easy, so straightforward, no excitement is there. He would present that thing in such surprise, full of surprise, full of amazement, that would of course sound very mysterious, very suspicious. Let's have an example of the same. How? So, see, for example, instead of saying that he had come across an uprooted tree on the highway, he would dramatic, he would say, with his eyebrows suitably arched and hand held up in a dramatic gesture, like a very straightforward thing is there. A fallen tree is there on the highway. If we have to tell, we'll say what we have seen. No, a tree was fallen, that's what we have seen. But he would not present this exactly in the same way. He would make dramatic gesture, expression, and then he would present this in very mysterious way. See how he would present. He would say, with eyebrows suitably arched. He would, he would in fact what? He would make his eyebrows somewhat circular and hands held up in dramatic expression. What he would say? He said, the road was deserted, the road was lonely, and I was all alone. And I was alone. Suddenly, I spotted something that looked like an enormous bushy beast. He would say, suddenly I saw something which seemed to be a huge bushy beast, full of bush, beast, lying sprawled across the road. He was lying across on the other side. Sprawling means by outstretching hands and legs. Alright, so what sprawled across the road? I was half inclined to turn and go back. And I was half thought, I was half decided to take a turn and go back. But as I came closer, I saw that it was a fallen tree. But when I came closer, what I found, it was a fallen tree, with its dry branches spread out. And in this way, such a common thing was presented in very much mysterious manner by him. Mahendra would stretch himself back in his canvas chair, and he was in fact listening to this. So he would stretch back in his canvas chair and listen to Ishwaran tell me stories uncritically. Uncritically means he never criticized his story at all. Alright, so he enjoyed the story because you can understand, in that remote area where there wasn't any television, there wasn't any source of entertainment. So the stories of Ishwaran used to be always a sort of perfect time pass for him. Alright, so let's see. The place I came from is a famous for timber. Timber means wood. Ishwaran would begin, he would start. There is richly wooded forest all around, and there is thick wood all around. The logs are hauled. Hauled means thrown onto the lorries. Lorries means truck by elephant. So how logs are loaded on trucks? Elephant throw them, on the trucks. They are huge, well-fed beasts. An elephant are huge, well-fed. Well-fed means well-eaten. These mean animal. When they turn wild, when elephant become wild, even the most experienced mahout, elephant rider, the person who controls elephant is called mahout, is not able to control them. Even that mahout cannot control those wild animals. After this prologue, so what is prologue? Prologue means preface, introduction. Ishwaran would launch into an elaborate means detailed anecdote, story involving an elephant. So then he told a story in which there was involvement of an elephant. So what that story is, of course, that is very interesting, and I believe that we must study that story in next video. Alright, so because a new story is there, that would be time consuming, and of course we cannot cover that story in this video, so that is why we would do that story in next video. Fine. So thank you very much for watching this video. You are great, so am I. Thank you so much.